A lot of great talks this morning. We're going to talk a bit more about how you can deploy and operate your GraphQL-based applications using AWS AppSync. So just a quick round of hands, a quick show of hands. Who here has heard of AWS AppSync before? All right, awesome. And who here has either built a project or is running applications using AWS AppSync? Cool, a few of you. That's awesome. So for those that might not know, AWS AppSync is a managed serverless GraphQL backend for mobile, web, and enterprise applications. It allows you to easily connect your different data sources and backends and present a single API endpoint to your clients. Effectively, AppSync is a managed GraphQL endpoint. It's a managed GraphQL server. It's managed real-time subscriptions, and it handles a lot of the logic associated with operating GraphQL in terms of authentication, authorization, caching, and also conflict resolution logic. So I'll be going over some of these features of AppSync, and in the second part of this presentation, Jane will be showing a demo of how to build an application using Amplify and AppSync. So just to get started, in terms of the data sources that AppSync natively supports, we have support for Amazon DynamoDB, which is our managed NoSQL database service. We have support for Amazon Elasticsearch, Aurora Serverless through our data API. This is still in preview, but this allows you to make REST API calls against Aurora Serverless. And I'll be talking about effectively how we have our resolver helpers to do this. And then we have Lambda, and with AWS Lambda, it really enables you to talk to pretty much any backend that you need to, either within AWS or to go and reach other HTTPS accessible endpoints. In terms of AppSync resolvers, when we're looking specifically at these data sources that are supported, we have a lot of, let's say, helper functions and helper code in our resolver logic to help you very quickly develop your resolvers using, for example, DynamoDB with an auto ID function, or the ability to very quickly bring in key values into a JSON format to bring back to your application. So probably all know, like with resolvers, the whole idea is to take your GraphQL call, effectively do a translation to whatever your backing store needs, typically a REST call, and then translate it back on the return function. So we use the Apache Velocity templating language to achieve this. Now, just briefly talking about real-time apps and subscription support. What we would see customers do before AppSync was effectively run a few different sets of servers to manage, the front end, for the web server front end, the pub sub server, which might be a Redis cluster or a Memcache cluster, and then a set of servers to manage the WebSocket connections to the clients. As you can imagine, that's quite a few servers to manage, and at AWS, if there's one thing that we like to do a lot is remove this heavy lifting in terms of doing the operation, the maintenance, the patching of these servers. So if we look at this architecture here, which is effectively allowing you to do mutations, for example, on DynamoDB, capture it through DynamoDB streams, push it to a pub sub server, and manage through the WebSocket servers the real-time updates to the client. Using AppSync, we really simplify this architecture, where the service itself will manage all these elements for you. And what your clients do is they connect to the single GraphQL endpoint, and through configured subscriptions on mutations, AppSync will be managing the connection back to the client. So just a few more details around this real-time capability. It's effectively an HTTPS connection that's run over MQTT sockets. If you don't know what MQTT is, it's effectively a lightweight pub sub protocol that's used a lot in IoT. And this is managed at the client SDK level. So you don't really need to do a lot of management or configuration in terms of the real-time subscriptions. This is really handled directly through the SDK, and it can take care of effectively handling let's say drops in connection or a poor connection state. On top of this, we also have the ability to do automatic catch up on snapshots, and also we have a feature that's called Delta Sync that allows you, especially in cases where you have intermittent connections, to define two different types of queries when you're doing a hydration of your application. A base query that would do a full load, let's say from your data sources into the application, but also a Delta query that allows you to just go and fetch, let's say, what has changed since the last drop-in connection or connection state. So this is really useful in cases where your application might be going in and out of coverage a lot or the connection is really poor. Delta Sync will be taking care of effectively ensuring that the application is rehydrated in a way that's not, let's say, resource consuming for the application. Also, in terms of offline capabilities, AppSync, effectively through the SDKs, can manage the persistent storage mediums that are behind the Apollo normalized cache. So whether it's local storage for web applications, async storage for React Native, SQLite for native platforms. This also enables you to very easily control how you want to manage the offline mode. So once again, example through Apollo, you can manage the different modes of when you want to do the updates, whether it's Wi-Fi only, Wi-Fi cellular. And in terms of doing the conflict resolution, AppSync does allow you to have a lot of this server-side logic pre-configured. So you can choose to use, let's say, a server win strategy, a client win strategy, or you can implement your a more complex conflict resolution strategy through the use of hooks and Lambda functions. Also, in terms of caching and once again, the SDK does have a number of abstractions, especially in terms of the JavaScript Apollo client SDK, where it can do a lot of automatic versioning, a lot of optimistic UI in terms of the online and offline modes, and also allows you to effectively just have a lot of this caching concern that's really taken care at the SDK level. In terms of AppSync is another element where it handles this layer in terms of the authorization, and it can talk to a number of IDPs via Cognito to also do authentication. So in this case here, AppSync has 4 different modes. There's the first mode that really is meant for development purposes, where it's an API key-based mode. The API key is set with a 7-day expiry, so it's not meant for production use. And then we have 3 other authorization modes, either through Cognito user pools, OpenID Connect authorization, or leveraging native AWS IAM authorization. So this is just an example of leveraging Cognito and Cognito user pools to do an authorization based on a role that's assigned to a user pool. So the idea here is that a user can sign in via Cognito, and this user would be assigned to a specific user group that would have a role attached, an IAM role, and effectively using the resolver logic, you can make a check against the IAM role to see whether the user has access to the data source or not. Another interesting element with resolvers, I forgot to mention it earlier, is we did release support for what's called pipeline resolvers. So this enables you to sequentially set up resolvers back to back. So you're able to do things like authorization logic before you do, let's say, your query logic or your processing logic on the resolver. So you don't need to do a round trip when you're doing, let's say, an authorization pass. So that's what I had to say about AppSync. So Jane is now going to do a quick demo of Amplify and AppSync. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, I'm Jane Shen. I'm a cloud application architect at AWS Canada. We're literally just next door from here if you haven't seen the big sign in front of the building. So here's a question. I saw a lot of you guys say you've heard of AppSync. Why haven't you built an app with it? Is it too hard? I don't have an account? I don't know how to start? No? Come on, give me something. OK, so I'm going to tell you something about, we call it Amplify. Have you heard of Amplify? Amplify is one of the open source software that's really taken place. It's originally authored by AWS. We actually have a couple teams in Seattle that's full-time writing this and committing to GitHub. So the purpose of Amplify is we're providing you with a framework that will give you a good developer experience for web and mobile apps. We're going to start with using AWS, but the purpose is not going to be AWS only. It should be really, for other providers, it's possible. It's designed to be flexible enough. So what does it give you? It's been out for over a year now, I think. It gives you ability to quickly add API, authorization, authentication, storage, analytics, and a little bit more. I'll show you in a bit. Right now, we have first-class support for a few popular JavaScript frameworks, such as React, Angular, Ionic. I think Vue is there. React Native, iOS, Android are also up there. We use the native SDK, forked from Apollo SDK, which is pretty cool. And we try to provide opinionated way to approach how to develop applications. Because even for me, I've been with Amazon for over 2 years. I'm still overwhelmed by the 300 services we have. So with Amplify, you don't need to worry about, okay, which database do I choose from? How do I authenticate my people? What's the difference between Cognito and some other things? Amplify tries to extract that away from you so that I was able to build an app without even opening the AWS console. So I don't even need to know what's going on there. That's the purpose of Amplify. So with the CLI, I know we're developers, we like to use CLIs. It really coordinates all the moving parts, right? So in this case, I can show you exactly how to develop a full application within the next 10 minutes. All right, so this is what I'm going to show. I'm going to show you a chat app. A chat app is a good example of AppSync or GraphQL because one, it requires API because this is a React app, by the way. It's going to hit an API, it's going to send a request to something, and then need to receive the messages on the way back in real time. So you take a look at the screen, what does it have? We have a user interface, we have conversations, users, and profile, which means I have to use authentication too, and you know who's talking. So if you from the top level down, this is what I think the data model should be. Bonus point, who knows what icon is? No? Antoine showed a few times. I first didn't include a label because I don't want you to, that's right, it's DynamoDB. I don't want you to think about in terms of DynamoDB tables, but just think in terms of a data model, right? So you start with users. We have one or more users, and they need to have conversations. This is kind of a way to combine concepts in a relational sense that you have a conversation link where it links users to conversations because one user can have more conversations and each conversation can have more people. And then on the other side, a conversation can have many, many messages and a user can have many, many messages. So this is actually a pretty complicated data model to design, really. I don't like to write that myself even. So how do we do this? Here are some Amplify commands. Pretty straightforward on the command line. You do npm install Amplify, you get that Amplify tool. And then you can start with Amplify init, which will get you a new project. We recently introduced a new environment support. You can actually inherit somebody else's project now, but we won't cover that. Maybe over drinks later I can show you. And you can add authentication, analytics, API, not just GraphQL API, because REST is not dead yet. You can add REST or GraphQL API here. And after you configure everything here, you run push with my favorite tool called AWS CloudFormation. Who hates it? Right, so here you don't have to worry about CloudFormation. Amplify push will take care of that for you. So let me show you how this works. Let me see if my terminal is up and running. Okay, can you see the font? It's good enough. So this is a GitHub chat app. It's on there. I'll show you the link afterwards. I literally just downloaded it, and there's nothing going on here. So I'm going to say Amplify init. So what this is going to do is it's going to initialize my application. So we're just going to call it, AWS Amplify Chat Demo. Because we have multiple environments, you start with something, I'm going to call it master. What's your favorite editor? VS Code wins. I have another workshop to build applications on Android, but today we're going to look at React app. So we're going to do React. This is all the same default you should be familiar with if you use React. So now it's going to configure CloudFormation in my AWS account. So I already have my AWS profiles configured, but if you don't have it, there, I got a gesture to say make it bigger, right? So here, if you don't already have a profile, if you choose no, it's going to open the console, make you create a profile. So I already have one. So this is going to take a few minutes. It will initialize a project in the cloud, which means it will set up a CloudFormation stack, and it will start creating a bunch of roles. It will give you a bucket to store your artifacts, which you really don't have to worry about. I just had to talk about it because I have 30 seconds to wait for this. So what this is happening is it's really not too bad. It's about 30 seconds, but it gives you a shell. This is how Amplify can keep track of what you're building in the AWS environment. When this is done, it's going to add a JSON file in your project. It will contain every single details in there. So if you're curious, you can go there and check it out. All right, so that's good. I'm going to say Amplify, add API. That's usually how I start because you want to create an API first. And then let's do GraphQL. That's what I'm doing today. API name. So Antoine mentioned earlier, there are multiple types of authorization type, API key to begin with. Cognito user pool is where it's an open ID implementation of us. We manage tokens authentication for you. So it's the recommended way. The other ways he's talking about, it will be supported later. We just don't have that right now. So let's pick that. Default configuration gives you sign in, sign up, sign in, forget password, very basic functionalities, which is, I think, is quite good. But if you want to set up your own configuration, for example, Facebook, Google, Amazon, you want to integrate with third-party providers, you can choose that. And this configuration gives you more flexibility. For example, do you want user to provide emails or phone numbers or one of them or none, or you want to say company, right? That's all there. Highly encourage you to try it out, but for now, we'll just use the default configuration. Do I have a schema? No, because we're starting from scratch. Do you want to guide a schema creation? Let's do that. So there are three options here when you create your project. So start with very simple single object schema, or one-to-many, where you have access control. I'm just going to pick the basic one because I'm going to override it anyway. So here's my Visual Studio Code. Because I chose this earlier, it popped it up for me, right? So here it is. I already have my app running. I am cheating because I have this ready there to be pasted in. Right, so there's the schema. Don't worry, I'll show you the details in a bit. Right, so when you're done editing, press Enter to continue. And that's it, right? That's how you can add a schema, GraphQL API. So what's going to happen now, I'm going to run Amplify push. So this will create my API, AppSync API in my AWS environment. So let's just see what we're creating here. We're adding a Cognito user pool that's under the auth category. We're adding a new API, call it AWS AppSync chat demo. Then just say, sure, we'll go ahead. And it's going to do a bunch of things. It will compile your schema. If it doesn't work, it's going to throw errors if you have typos. And then it's going to look what you're doing, and it's going to figure out, generate a bunch of files. So do you want to generate code for your API? This is very useful when you're doing native development. So if you're using Java or Swift, you need strongly typed objects, right, to do your object creating or reading. So it's very useful, but for JavaScript, you really don't need to worry about this. So I'm going to do JavaScript, and this command will generate all the queries, mutations, and subscriptions for you. So I have a user. You want to create a user. You want to create a message. You want to list messages. All of this will be done for you, which is really nice because, I hate copy and pasting typing. Let's do all that. Maximum depth of statements will be generated. If you have nested objects, you can choose how far your queries are going, how many levels objects you want returned. So I'm just going to do 2 for now. And then this will take about 5 minutes. That's why I have things to tell you about. Let's go through our schema a bit. Right, so here you go. I'm going to close this. How's that? Can you see? Good? All right, so here's my schema.graphql. I'm sure by now you've already familiar with what a typical GraphQL schema looks like. But what the hell are those at model things? What's that? We actually have a talk this afternoon, I think, by Ryan. He's going to talk about custom directives. So this is actually something we call the GraphQL transformer. It's being implemented based on schema definition language. It's just it's open. It's a concept everybody can do. It's open source. You can implement your own directives. So AWS has implemented a few very useful directives here. So let's take a look. We have type user. We have type conversation, type a message, convo link, and subscriptions. Does that look familiar? Remember that DynamoDB icons? Right? These are our object models. These are how we're connecting our applications and how to design a schema. So I'm creating all this, but a model here. Model here means I am actually creating a database table in the back that stores all the user information. Same with the conversation, same with the message, and same with Convo link. So after this, it's actually creating 4 or 5 DynamoDB tables behind the scenes for me so I can store all my information. Add auth. This one gives us ability to authorize who's able to see what's out there. So for example, here I say I'm only allowing the owner based on the attribute ID so they can see what's going on with this user. And I'm not letting anybody else to see what kind of queries. I'm not allowing everybody else to use the queries. So same with conversations, only owners that have the members matching can see the object this person created. Connections. This one is how to create a one-to-many or many-to-many relationship. Just say each conversation can have, this means an array. Each conversation can have multiple messages, and it can associate with multiple conversations because possibly you can have other conversations maybe, right? Same with here, my message can have a connection to an author. This is how you can kind of design your model in the way that you're connecting your models a little bit. But this gets complicated when you talk to many-to-many relationship, but this example, I think it's a good starting point to give you like one-to-many, a few objects. And subscriptions, I want to know who's created a conversation, who's created a message. So that's our schema. How's our thing doing? Oh, it's still going? All right, it's creating a bunch of things. You see, it's creating an API. It's creating, let's see what else is doing there, DynamoDB tables. So it's still going. So I'm prepared for that. So this is an app I already have running, I think. I'm going to show you what the app looks like. I'm going to turn this off for now. Right, so I'm running this on a 3000 port, and then what's running right now is 3001 port. So I already have this up and running. This is a Chrome browser. This is a Safari browser. They look the same, but you can see they're from 2 different users, right? John and Jane, very good names there. You can take a look because these are 2 different people. If you click the profile tab, you can see this is Jane and John, 2 different users. I've signed in already. And if you look at users, I can see myself because I can't see other people because I'm only allowed to see myself due to the @auth directive. So let's start a conversation. So I already have a conversation going on earlier. Actually, just open it. Right, I'm going to say, hello, John from GraphQL Day, Toronto. Right, when this happens, you see the other one pop up right away. Because this is, well, it's running on my local host, but it's actually going through the WebSocket on my machine between these 2 browsers through the AppSync API and then coming back down. So this is actually happening. And then if you say hello back, and you enter, right, this one goes back to the other screen. Right, so this is actually all happening behind the scenes, and then it's a pretty decent conversation app. Just to show you I'm not cheating, I'm going to pull up my AWS console, just give you a quick look at what's happening behind the scenes. Let's see if this is done yet. Oh, it's still done, not done. Okay, our Wi-Fi is kind of taking some time. All right, so I'm going to show you. So this is the AWS console. Right, this is what AppSync looks like. Right, you're just looking at a list of APIs, and we just created this one earlier. It's still being created, but I kind of already have the API here. What I'm going to show you now is what I showed you earlier, which is this one. So what kind of schema went in here? Right, remember we only entered about 4 or 5 objects because we're using the custom directives. Our schema is actually a little bit longer than that. It gives you ability to query easily. It creates all the input types for you, and then it creates all the mutations for you. Right, so you don't have to worry about this. It's actually pretty long. It's all taken care of for you. And then if we look at DynamoDB table, sorry, my DB table is pretty messy. I have a ton of tables. Right, if you look at messages, oh, not this one. Got 2 of them. Right, so there are 2 messages I just sent. Say, hello, John from GraphQL Day, Toronto. And then John says hello back. Right, so everything has already been persisted in the back. It's there. Application's working through the socket level. So, oh, this is done. Yay. Right, so this is done. I can actually just do this. And I do npm start. And it's going to complain 3,000 is already taken because I'm running it. Let's take a different port. Compiling in React, taking some time, the package files. And there we go, right? So there goes our app. So you see the one I showed you, I've already signed in because the sign up for user takes extra time. You do MFA, you have to type in that code. So here is exactly what I had to do before this demo. So I signed in with 2 different users. All right, so back to where we were. Just a couple things to show you before we finish. Oh man, I love this thing. There you go. Right, so here are some things, just overview of the transforms. We build them based on the directives, which you can you can write your own custom directives. These are not the only limited ones. For example, I only showed you model auth connection. There's a version, so it's automatically going to resolve conflicts for you. Searchable is going to spin up a Elasticsearch cluster in the back, so you can do fuzzy searches, you can do matching, mapping, and all these things, which is pretty cool. And a few more things. So that first link is the app I showed you, downloaded on GitHub. You should be able to run the chat app within 5 minutes or so if you have AWS account. A couple of more links for you to look at, some Apple AppSync and Amplify examples, and 5 very, very awesome colleagues of ours who are very active on Twitter, who listens to all your feedback, answering questions. But because keep in mind, Amplify is an open source project, all the roadmap items are based on your feedback. So go there, open issue if you run into a bug, if you have feature requests, definitely go there and they will love to hear your opinions. And that's it for us. How's our time? We're good, right?